Hey, Karen Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, Kirk. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. I've been doing this little series on COVID. Not that I'm an epidemiologist or virologist or specialist, but I'm just a guy trying to settle the world down a little bit. And so throughout the, uh, I don't know, past 3 weeks, however long we've been sequestered,
Yeah.
I don't like the word quarantine, by the way, because quarantine would imply that I'm ill, and I'm not ill, so I'm not being quarantined. I'm under house arrest. I'm being sequestered. So what I've been trying to do every day is just basically, you know, bring people, like, get people's heads out of the headlines, apply denominators to the crap that's being thrown around, all the numbers that are being thrown around, talk about what we know and what we don't know. And as you know, what we don't know is almost everything. Um, and then I just reinforce the idea that, hey, the best possible outcome with all of this, regardless how long the sesquitation, however you say that, sesquitation, uh,
Frustration?
sesquitation, whatever.
Imprisonment?
Yeah, I've been drinking or something. Sequestration. Yeah. So however long we're sequestered, I quit trying to be
In
smart.
jail. That's how I feel.
However long we're under house arrest, however long the economy's down, like we're going to, the best we'll ever do at coming back out of this is to be as healthy as possible, and that's mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, obviously financially as healthy as possible. And so the good news is it's the same crap I always talk about every single day with every client. You got to sleep, you need to exercise, you need to eat right, and you need to control your stress. It's all lifestyle. All the supplements by definition are supplemental. They are for when you're already at the 99th percentile, you want to get that extra 1% and you start doing things like that. But for the most part, most people just need to you know, pay attention to their lifestyle and its big, easy
Right.
moving pieces. So, you and I have known each other for quite a while. I would probably 10 years at this point, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I first met you because you're over at NHRC, Naval Health and Research Center on Point Loma, and you came over to the SEAL teams to do some research. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but that's when I met you. And then obviously we have lots of talks about uh, geeky scientific things, and you are the smartest exercise physiologist I know. So why don't you tell the audience, my listeners, a little bit, like impress them with all your bona fides, and just tell a little bit about what you do, your educational background, and where your interests are.
All right. Well, right now, like you said, I currently work at Naval Health Research Center, and my research portfolio is in human performance optimization and musculoskeletal injury prevention. So basically, with the special ops guys still looking at ways to improve their performance, enhance performance, reduce stress, or look at stress loads with training. And then on the other side, just looking at injury prevention, a lot of that's with the Marine Corps. But prior to that, I did a clinical research postdoctoral fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic, where we studied metabolic diseases and obesity-related diseases, from everything from diabetes, kidney disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gastric bypass surgery, you name it. And so there, when I was there, I was looking at a lot of different, again, hormonal changes and changes within the metabolic system as a function of different diet and exercise programs. So we were looking a lot at low glycemic versus high glycemic diets, whole grains versus refined grains, and how much exercise is required to help sort of attenuate weight gain as well as reverse disease. And so we did a lot of our work kind of looking at the underlying effects of diet and exercise on overall health, but mostly in the reversal of disease. And so coupled to all of that, I also teach, as you know. So I'm teaching this semester exercise physiology at San Diego State in the graduate program. And then I also teach a metabolic physiology course that looks at more like the biochemical breakdown of foods during exercise. So carbohydrates, fats, proteins, ketones, and then under what conditions do you favor what type of fuels, and how the whole system sort of integrates and works together to keep us healthy and keep us moving. So
Right
Yeah,
on.
but I'm supposed to be from afar, like this, via Zoom, because of this
Yeah. Well,
craze over the virus.
yeah, the evil COVID that's lurking around the corner, just waiting to jump onto our eyeballs and noses and make us
It's
violently ill.
ridiculous. It's a
Uh,
little ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. So I really don't. I mean, I know. I'll take it back. I know some really smart people who are definitely on the more doomsday side of this than I would have thought. But I would say the vast majority of people that I know are kind of like, really? Like, huh?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
I
something's
think
going
everybody
on
has.
for sure. There is a virus. It is killing people. Like, get it. Yep. Um, but, people die all year, every year. People die of viral infections all around the world all the time. And not to, dismiss or be glib about anybody's death, but there is a certain amount of risk involved inherent in being alive and living in society. And so, yeah, we'll do our best to be straight about this and let's just talk about the same concepts as opposed to maybe necessarily anything COVID induced. But so I tell people a lot when I'm doing these that activity is one of the things that will keep them healthy during this. So it's not obviously right for everybody to go exercise if they're not people who usually exercise, right? If they're
No,
30
they
or
can't.
40 pounds overweight, they haven't exercised in 10 or 15 years. Now's not the time to be taking up jogging or something necessarily. Like they could if that's their goal, because I don't think anybody needs to be cautious about that. But
I think
yeah,
they can. I think they should start walking though, not with jogging,
right. And so
which
that's
I
what I
think
say.
now's the
You
perfect
just need to
time.
be that. So I'm the point of all that is I make a distinction between being active and exercising. So in my
Right.
mind, a lot of exercise is kind of performance based. It's goal oriented. I want to run this far at that, at such and such speed, or I want to run this far today, or I want to lift this much weight, or like whatever.
Right.
Like exercise usually has like some metric to it, whereas activity could be washing your own car and mowing your own lawn and going for a
Right.
walk and walking your dog and cleaning your own house and whatever, taking stuff up and down the stairs, whatever.
Right.
So activity, so basically activity based on your fitness level and just not to overdo it. So but I can't say intelligently. I know the general mechanisms and concepts, but I don't know nearly as much about it as you do. What is it about exercise that actually makes you healthier besides just making? And I know it's a huge question, but you can just like very the 30,000 foot view.
Sorry, you just shut
Apart from getting your muscles stronger and more fit, like, what's it doing for other metrics of health? Like what's it doing for your inflammatory cascades, and what's it doing for your blood pressure, and what's it doing for your fuel partitioning and your blood glucose and, respiratory system, cardiovascular, or like all that stuff. Like just, so people can understand, can people understand the basic physiology of how exercise helps besides just making them stronger and more muscular?
Right. Well, I guess we can. I mean, it's like a loaded question
I
because there's
know,
a lot of.
it's huge. This is way top. This is like
Like, let me just tell you about the whole body and when.
60,000 foot view, just like some basic concepts of how exercise does something for you besides making you look better naked. Like what else does it do for you?
Well, that's important. No,
That's
but
important, of course, right?
besides looking better naked,
Yeah.
no, we'll start with the immune system first, since that's what kind of in this environment that we're in right now. In general, so there's two ways to think about it, because so people don't get confused. Sometimes when you do heavy exercise training, people that are athletes and competitors, that can compromise your immune system. It can lead to a reduction of your leukocytes or white blood cells and factors that help protect you. However, moderate and low intensity to moderate exercise has been shown to improve, leukocyte or white blood cell production, and it also mostly just helps circulation. So when you have, if you're just sitting stagnant all the time and you're not doing anything, then your blood flow is slower, your cardiovascular system is not at optimum, and so that's independent of heart rates. It's moving fluids and things around your body, right? As you begin to exercise.
And that's helping with lymphatic and cardiovascular flow, right?
Correct, because you're moving, as you're moving, you're increasing the blood flow and perfusion to those various tissues, that you're redistributing blood and lymph to those different tissues, and it's circulating those cells around that are there, that are part of our immune system to identify foreign bodies and to either attack them and destroy them, or also then to develop antibodies against them. So in case you have another exposure. So with the case of what's going on right now, it's helpful to at least, if you do have a slight exposure to that antigen, to at least circulate those cells around it that are part of our immune system to be able to digest that antigen and then express antibodies and develop antibodies against it, so that your immune system.
And by antigen, you're talking about the virus.
About the virus. It can be any virus. So whether it's COVID or the other flu strain, just in general, that's how our acquired immune system works, So you and I know we have the innate and we have the acquired immune system. So we're talking about the acquired immune system, which is that development of an antibody, which is the theory behind vaccinations. You give a small exposure and your body develops the ability to fight it off if you're ever exposed to it again, which, like, for example, here in California, there's a lot of articles that have been circulating, and something that I believe is that a lot of us have already been exposed to this early on in like November, December, before it was really identified. And so the reason why they think the cases here have been as bad as in other areas, because we have this herd immunity where people have already been exposed to it at a sort of a slower rate, and then we've already developed the antibodies against it. So you don't have this large population of people that have, that are ill. We have had 50 deaths here in San Diego, and I think maybe 700 total in the state of California. When you look at our size, that's a drop in an ocean, compared to the people that
that's the same. That's the same as Texas. Texas has about 300 and some odd deaths, with about 75% of the population of California.
Right. So, with respect to like the immune system, that's what it's good for. It's just basically helping to circulate the cells around. With respect to cardiovascular system, it's the same. So people will say, like, to your point, if they've never exercised before, this is actually the perfect time for people to get into a routine, into a habit, because since they have this sort of forced quarantine, we're still, I don't know how it is in Texas or wherever your other listeners are, but right now, like, our oceans and our trails are closed down, but you can still walk outside in your neighborhood. So it's a good time to get up, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon, but aligning with what your schedule will be once you get back to work, so that it's a sustainable type program, to get up and to start walking. Just even the basics of getting 30 minutes of activity a day, couple that to time when you can get sun exposure, because despite, the fear of skin cancer, we do need at least 20 minutes of a full exposure of sunlight to help get vitamin D within our system. And vitamin D also will not only keep your bones and your muscles healthy, but also help with immune function as well, to help fight off whether it's COVID or the flu or a cold or anything in addition. So it kind of gets a double bang for your buck.
And the UV light will also denature the proteins of the virus, and
correct.
It's a sterilizing factor. Yeah.
Oh yeah, UV is one of the strongest sterilizing agents there is. Really, the sunlight's a natural sterilizer for us.
Right.
So, yeah. So on that aspect, go ahead.
So let's help out the average American who maybe doesn't exercise a lot, maybe sporadically. Now, if you're 25 and you're fairly lean and you don't exercise, I'm not that concerned about you. But if you're 35 to 55 and you haven't exercised for 10 or 15 years, and maybe you're got a little extra padding on you, like, how do they know what's moderate and what's mild? Like, how far should they push themselves? Like, what sort of metrics can they gather about themselves to know that they're doing enough but not overdoing it?
Well, it's not a perfect equation, but you have like age predicted heart rate max. So you can take 220 minus your age, and that gives you your maximal heart rate, sort of like a quick and dirty way of estimating your maximal heart rate. So from there, then they can just calculate working at about 60%, 50 to 60% to start out of what their max heart rate is, and to try to get their body up to that, to kind of push their system a little bit without over stressing their heart. And usually starting out with at least 30 minutes of walking, like a vigorous type walk, is a very safe safe place to start. They're not going to induce anything. Even if they had an underlying cardiovascular issue, it's not enough to push the system to provoke any kind of incident. So
to be clear,
huh?
So to be clear, you're saying 220 minus their age, and then 50 to 60% of that. So if they're 40, 220 minus 40 is 180. So we're talking 50 to 60% of 180.
Correct. Just
so
to start
90
out.
to 110. So that would be probably they'd get that much just walking out their door, probably get to 90.
Exactly. It's nothing too strenuous. And if they, after, doing that for a week or two, if they're feeling fine, they can push themselves a little bit longer. It's just, if they're healthy, like if they have no underlying health issues besides just being overweight, and maybe if they're overweight, they might be a little bit early insulin resistant, pre-diabetic or whatever, in which exercise will actually help control the insulin and the glycemic, or the glucose load that's in the blood, because exercise helps to bring glucose into the tissues that are going to use it, right? So it facilitates entry of carbohydrate into muscle for use, okay? And it helps to clear the system out. So if they start out with just 30 to 60 minutes of walking a day, and to put it to you this way, when I was at the Cleveland Clinic, we were doing research on older 65 plus obese, and we had them exercising 5 days a week for an hour at an intensity between 60 to 85%. So, if an older obese diabetic individual can do that, granted they were under, an exercise physiologist care, someone was there with them all the time, the regular average person out in the community can take advantage of this downtime and get out on a good walking program or a cycling program if they want to ride their bike. It's the same thing, just monitoring their heart rate, monitoring how they're feeling, making sure they're properly hydrated, paying attention to their sweat. There's little tiny clues that they can do to get themselves up on a good program. And
I don't think you really mentioned it, but one of the things that you do in your research with the SEAL teams is you do a lot of gadgets. You have a lot of gadget monitoring. Can you give any advice for people who maybe want to track their heart rate without having to use their fingers?
Most people nowadays have some kind of wearable, like a Fitbit or a Garmin.
Well,
or
most
a
people
watch.
Most people do. I don't think that most Americans do.
Okay. All right. Well, you'd be surprised actually. The wearable industry has gone up quite a bit. So, the least expensive, but the best bang for their buck could be a Fitbit. Fitbits run between 100 and 200. I'm not promoting any particular brand. I'm just thinking like they're available on Target, they're available online, they're kind of in these places. But, they can monitor their step counts, if anything. So, at a very minimum, someone should be getting 10,000 steps a day. So if people can have some kind of device, whether it's a Fitbit or their phone, some phone apps nowadays can keep track based on, I think it's the GPS within the phone if they're walking with the phone on these apps, to keep track of their distance as well as how much they're doing, their work rate. As far as heart rate goes, they need to either have some kind of device that's monitoring their system. So whether it's a chest strap or a wrist or a ring, whatever it is they want to wear to get their heart rate. A lot of there's caveats with a lot of the wearables, but if you're just using them to measure, I think that's the most important thing, is you're using them to monitor like day-to-day fitness or day-to-day health. It's not an exact metric, a measuring device. So their heart rate might not be exactly what the output is providing it, but if they're consistently wearing it, they can start to monitor their trends and their heart rate and their heart rate changes over time. And as you become more fit and more healthy, or your sleep is good, you're going to notice like a sort of a subtle decline in your resting heart rate, which is good. And then when you begin to exercise, you'll have more of an area of room of increase to get that heart rate up, which then overall will just keep your heart stronger. So
what about you talked a little bit about your research with nutrition and exercise, and so I know a lot of people right now, which is confusing for a lot of people when they're maybe trying to start a new program, is how much should they be eating? Like if they're exercising more than they usually exercise and it makes them hungrier, is that a good thing? If they're exercising so hard that it's making them not hungry, is that a good thing? And is there any like best time to eat something? Like I already harp on just eating like single ingredient foods, things that your grandparents would consider food.
Right.
And sort of agnostic about whether you want to be a vegan or a carnivore, but probably the best idea is to like have some blend of just things people call food, like or things that are actually food.
Right.
So do you have any advice on, what should be happening with their hunger if they're new to this? And then any kind of tips for, should they be trying to eat certain types of food more or less? If they're just, if they're just kind of starting out or getting back into exercise during this bit.
Well, it depends on, their goals. If they're a little overweight and they want to lose weight, then you're going to have to go a little bit hungry. Okay. So it has to do with calories in and calories out. It's a very simple equation. You don't have to weigh food, measure food, any of that. It's really, as adults, we lose that ability to actually really know when we're hungry. We start to eat just programmed based on, oh, I wake up in the morning, I'm supposed to have breakfast. Oh, it's noon, I'm supposed to have lunch. Or, oh, it's whatever time I'm supposed to have dinner. So we get into this false paradigm of like, I need to eat at this certain time. So people actually have, most adults have lost that ability to regulate and actually know when they're truly hungry. And so some of the things I tell people is, there's no human, I'll take that back. Yes, there are people that have starved themselves to death. It's anorexia, right?
Yeah.
But physiologically, we can't really kill ourselves. And so if you just try to tap into the true feeling of hunger and the true feeling of full, like just because you get a whole cheeseburger, it doesn't mean you have to eat the whole cheeseburger. And that's another thing that we've been programmed, is that you need to clear your plate. You actually don't need to clear your plate. You just eat until you feel full and satiated, and you can save the rest, give it to your dog, throw it away, whatever it is that you want to do. And also just learn to make smaller portions, And so as Americans, as our society, as this, we've become so, if it's not this huge steak that covers my plate, then I'm being ripped off, or I'm not getting my money's worth at whatever. So when it comes to starting a new exercise program, if they want to lose weight, it's best to go a little bit hungry, because you need to get into that caloric deficit in order to lose the weight. The most important thing is having a balanced diet. So, not cutting any one group. So not going on a high protein, high fat, not dropping carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates to build muscle. You need carbohydrates to sustain. So, but it's quality carbohydrates. It's not your refined foods, not your quick sugars. You want to have, try to get your carbohydrates from your vegetables, primarily your vegetable sources. Watch how much fruit. Fruit does have a lot of sugar, so it just depends on the type of fruit. Berries are always really good. Bananas are good, especially for people that are starting out with high, good amounts of potassium. But so are a lot of your vegetables and your bell peppers and a lot of the other things that have natural electrolytes in them to help keep their salts in balance, essentially. And then, as you and I have talked about in the past, like lean proteins, healthy proteins, and then heart-healthy fat. It's like fat isn't the enemy. It's just the type, again, of fat that you're ingesting, and watching the, really the simple sugars. It's the stuff that everyone should know. It's just bringing in the junk, and it's not a time to comfort eat. Yes, we're in isolation or whatever, but this is actually a really good time also to reestablish good food habits. People should have time to cook. They should have time to meal prep. So there's no more excuses. That's my point. People always say, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to prepare this. I don't have time to exercise. But now they have all the time in the world. So it's a good time to start getting into the habit of maybe on Sunday evenings, start food prepping for the week so that you can have good, healthy snacks available to you. You can pack your lunch and bring it to work. You can start out the day with a workout followed by a breakfast. In general, a lot of the research has shown that people that exercise in the morning are the ones that tend to stick with their exercise programs. It's also a great way to get up when you're fasted in the morning to exercise, because you have higher amounts of fats in your system from overnight. And then you can utilize those fats during exercise. So you can actually start to reduce your cholesterol, your triglycerides, and sort of improve your lipid profile when you're exercising in a fasted state. And it will also help maintain blood glucose. So you start to regulate your blood glucose and develop some sensitivity to insulin, so that as you begin to exercise, your body is also better able to use those carbohydrates that you're ingesting, over time. So a lot of overall benefits on the dietary side.
And then what about, is exercise itself a good gauge for whether or not is hunger a good gauge for whether or not you're exercising correctly? So
not really. It's kind of a dissociative. It's hard to use it as a gauge. You need to just more listen to the cues from your stomach and not your head, and you've seen this, like you can drive by In-N-Out hamburger and you smell an In-N-Out hamburger and you suddenly are hungry and want In-N-Out. For us here in Southern California, right?
It's Whataburger here.
Whataburger
here.
Whataburger? Okay.
No, we have In-N-Out. We have In-N-Out too. Like,
well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, no one I know drives by In-N-Out and doesn't smell, and it's like suddenly, oh, I'm hungry, because you have that. It goes back to your memory, and you recall like, oh, when I eat that hamburger, I feel really good. It tastes really good. So it brings up memory that's not necessarily your hunger, right? And so it's learning to understand whether or not you're actually really hungry. You have the memory of how that food made you feel, and then applying the behavior. Most of weight loss, especially if we're talking about weight loss, is a lot of it's behavioral. It's controlling the behaviors that led to those, the increase in weight gain. And like I mentioned before, it's not using food as a treat. Food is there to sustain us. I mean, you can enjoy it, but at the same time, it's really to keep the body healthy, to keep the body alive. But if you're exercising more, you may notice a slight uptick in hunger, but over time, those hormones that regulate hunger, so your ghrelin and your leptin and some of these hormones that come from your gut and from your brain, your adipose tissue, they also start to regulate. So when you're overweight, you have those hormones are not in their proper balance, not in their proper concentration. And as you begin to exercise, hormones that are secreted from the gut, from the brain, from the adipose tissue, all start to normalize as well. So you might notice little changes in your hunger as exercise programs go on, and that's just due to the hormones that are regulating satiety and hunger in your system,
which are all reset during sleep.
Correct. They are. I agree. Yes.
So my audience has heard a lot about that.
Yes, I'm a huge proponent of sleep, because actually when you don't sleep apnea and sleep disorders are really prevalent in obesity, because it exacerbates the cortisol, the stress response, and it alters satiety hormones. So if you don't have appropriate sleep, then you will have usually have metabolic dysfunction. Correct.
Yeah. All right. So let me
exercise will help you sleep.
It will. And sleeping will make you more resilient to exercise.
Right. However, you just don't want to exercise 3 hours or about 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, because your metabolism's elevated. So you really need, that's the big important thing, is exercising at least, 4 hours prior to bedtime if you can.
Because you're releasing a bunch of stress hormones, which is the nice little underhand segue that I was about to throw at you anyway. Because you talked a little bit earlier about how a lot of your research, and I know what you've done with SEALs and other special forces, is stress adaptation and stress, like the impact of exercise on stress and vice versa, and performance and stress. Do you have just tell people how you think about the effects of, because right now people are stressed out, right? Whether they're stressed out because of the virus, or they're stressed out because they're feeling isolated and locked down and under house arrest, or if they're stressed about the economy, losing their job, and who knows the hell what else. Like, this is a bunch of upheaval. Nothing about life is normal. And, stress basically comes from being in an abnormal environment, right? Once we kind of learn what's going on around us, we become less stressed. So can you talk a little bit about how exercise impacts stress, and how people can think about using exercise to affect their stress?
Well, there's a lot of research that has shown that exercise actually helps on the mental side of stress. It helps to sort of alleviate mental stress, and it helps to promote like positive feelings. So whether it's your serotonin, your dopamine type pathways, but actually positively affect mood and behavior. So So on the plus side, exercise can do that. It's actually very beneficial for the neural chemistry as well in the brain function. So it can be a stress reliever, and help just kind of move and get some of those hormones that we talked about that are released, but to get them cleared from the system. So most of our hormones have to get reuptaked back into our system or cleared out through the kidneys. So again, as you're increasing your blood flow and your filtration and your circulation of a lot of these compounds, it can also facilitate the removal of these compounds as well. So as you're aware, we have two stress pathways, right? We have our HPA, which leads to cortisol, and then we also have our fear, sympathetic nervous system type response. And so two of them, if you're talking about the cortisol pathway, that's regulated from via negative feedback. So as the body becomes more used to the stress, it's going to feed back and start to attenuate that response versus, the sympathetic system, the only way to attenuate that response or slow that response is actually to remove the fear, to remove the stimulus. So the more someone stays in this hyper sympathetic feared state, their parasympathetic, that calming side, can't come in and do its job to bring them back down to homeostasis or back down to to equilibrium. Does that make sense? So with exercise, at least, it helps on the release in that pathway. It helps to clear a lot of those hormones down and kind of attenuate that response a little bit. So that's one.
So maybe what you're alluding to is that like the heart rate variability being like a one metric of whether you have a lot of sympathetic tone, or what do you use to know if somebody, like, is it just subjective? Do you just if you feel stressed, or do I need to know, do I need to know what my heart rate variability is to know if I have too much sympathetic tone, or how does the lay audience?
Yeah, I don't think we have to get that granular for the lay audience. I mean, they're going to have different devices, but again, depending on the nature of the device, a lot of them aren't very good at detecting HRV, and it's all it is a metric between how flexible you are between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic system, and the more flexible you are, the higher your HRV is.
So just to explain the difference there, because I know a lot of my audience will know that, but some people listening may not. They may have heard sympathetic and parasympathetic, but they may not really know what they are.
Okay, so sympathetic is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic is, as we say, our rest and digest. So the fight or flight is, you start to have dilation of your pupils to bring more light, and your heart rate starts to, it's basically preparing you to fight, to be in some kind of adverse environment. Versus the parasympathetic, when that stressor is removed, then the parasympathetic system is there to help drive down your heart rate and to basically bring a calm to the system. It redistributes blood away from working muscles, more towards the core, towards the digestive system, to help kind of, again, just bring everything down. So you have two ways, our heart rate is regulated. On the sympathetic side, you have hormones and compounds that help drive that heart rate up above 100 beats per minute. And then the parasympathetic side is a different set of hormones that come in to help bring that heart rate, kind of drive the heart rate down. I guess if you want to think about it in the simplest way, So really it's just two different ways that our body has to it's just, I guess, two different states that we function in. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. I think that's fine.
Okay.
So if I balance my sympathetic nervous system by, let's say, just cognitive processes. I do my own research. I listen to people, and it calms me down about what's going on. And I can control it somewhat to that extent. Now, if I'm struggling to control my sympathetic tone, isn't exercising going to make that worse because I'm putting my body under stress?
Yeah, exercise. Well, it sounds strange, but it comes back to your outlook on it. So if you're looking at exercise, like you take athletes, for example, if you sometimes at work, their exercise training becomes a stressor because then suddenly they have to meet this metric. I need to run this many miles today. You see this especially in endurance type events because they need to meet certain wickets in order to meet their milestones of training. right?
Those endurance
Dying,
athletes are crazy people. I mean, I know some really like batshit crazy people that run ultra marathons and stuff. So I know what you're talking about. That's a serious psychosis. But keep
thank
going.
you. Okay, thank you. I know a lot of people just like to throw heavy shit around, but serious psychoses. No, but anyways, but if you're looking at it from perspective like, hey, I'm gonna get outside and take a break from my desk or take a break from being inside watching Netflix or whatever, and get outside and enjoy the beautiful day, the sun shining, you know, the air in my face, whatever it is, and that's your outlook, then exercise isn't can look at it as like a negative. It's not a positive. So yes, it's inducing that same response of increasing your heart rate, but at the end of the day, it's not stimulating us. It's hard to explain. Yes, you're getting a spike in your epi and your norepinephrine, you have an increase in your cortisol and all of that, but it's a different way that your body's responding to it. And I don't know how to explain it without getting.
I know that's super complex, but you got to the point that I wanted you to get to.
Right. So it can actually be it's a stress reliever. And so for a lot of us, like for myself with a stressful job, exercise to me actually helps me relieve my stress, because if I'm having a stressful day or it helps, you know, if by doing something physical, it helps to just sort of release that pressure valve to kind of release. With respect to, you know, mental health, or, you know, most of the research has shown that, you know, exercise and mild exercise actually helps improve anxiety disorders, depression, PTSD. I mean, you name it. It helps to actually kind of, without getting again too physiological, kind of correct the system, you know, to bring it back into balance, you know, between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems, you know. So, but with other techniques that people use all the time, breathing techniques. I don't know, did you just share your screen with me?
I just messed something up. Hold on, let me.
Okay. Anyway, you
can keep talking.
Okay. Is like different breathing techniques. So, you know, for example, I'm a huge fan of yoga. And so just doing any kind of breathing, I can't sit still. So for me, meditation doesn't work. But for me, yoga is like a moving meditation. So there's something that resonates with each individual. So whether it's taking deep breaths, which is something that we've seen, actually brings heart rate down fairly quickly, helps to calm the nervous system, just breathing in a focused manner, moving in a dedicated space. That a lot of times also helps to drive down stress as well.
All right.
So, and you don't need a lot of it. Like some people, you can even do 10, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Just sometimes if you're feeling anxious, just taking a step back, you know, and just breathing, that's been shown to be very beneficial as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I've taught people, and, you know, I'd say the majority of people I deal with are pretty dialed in on things. They're pretty, you know, they do a lot of research and reading on health and wellness and all that before they even meet me. But when somebody is, you know, really sort of new to the whole concepts and ideas, engage with that, I just go for straight mindfulness and just getting people to think about the moment. You know, if I can get them to do that for like a couple of weeks, and I do things as simple as just say, hey, I want you to like only use your non-dominant hand for this week for everything, like to brush your teeth, open doorknobs, like, you know, write if you can, or like whatever you can use your mouse with your left hand, like anything you can do. And that just forces you to think about like right now. And then after that, I kind of step it up in a little bit of complexity, and I'll say, hey, I want you to park like 3 blocks from your office and walk. And I want you to count how many times your left foot hits the ground, you know, things like that. You just get people. And that's really sort of the whole idea of meditation. And I think it gets a little overblown as being this super intimidating thing when it's really just, you know, not paying attention to the noise around you, literal and figurative. All right. So just, I mean, we've gone long already, but just as a little fun, tell me what's the dumbest thing going on in California right now around COVID?
Everything.
Everything.
I'm like, release the animals, let us back out. I don't know. I was like one of only 5 people in Costco the other day without a mask on. So, and I think the best and the stupidest things that I've seen are people driving in their own car with face masks and gloves on, because what most people don't know about cross-contamination. And so I have, because I've worked with radioactive compounds, and I know how to double glove and remove gloves. But if you don't know sterile procedures, most people are contaminating their vehicles and their phones and everything they touch because they wear gloves, they go into the store, and then they come back in their car. So that, I saw a guy driving in a convertible the other day with a mask and gloves on, and I was like, I'm like, why do you, with his top down? I'm like, what are you doing? You know? And so I just think the whole thing, I get it. If you're a healthcare worker and you are dealing with a COVID positive patient, by all means, yes, wear your PPE. And if you feel the need to wear it in the grocery store, but realize like it's everywhere. It can be everywhere. I think this whole thing in my mind has been silly, because all it's done is bring awareness to the fact that most people need to wash their hands more. I draw blood and deal with urine and blood and saliva all the time. So I wash my hands neurotically all the time. I always have. But it's just kind of in my mind, it's like, hey, people, stop being gross. You should wash your hands, sneeze in your elbow. It's all the things I taught my kids when they were 3 to do. And now suddenly we're telling adults to do it on a larger scale. And so that's my little soapbox on it. I think this whole thing, I get it. They didn't want to tax the healthcare system. You know, there's a critical supply of ventilators. However, you know, the normal population, if we were just doing our due diligence from the beginning, it wouldn't have gotten to this.
Well, I mean, it's not like there's anything that we can do to avoid being exposed to the virus. I mean, it's smaller than a dust particle, and if you think that you can avoid a dust particle that's that there's billions and there's quadrillions and quadrillions of these around the world, and you're going to avoid every dust particle by wearing a mask or gloves, like, no, you're not. You may change the rate in which you get enough of exposure to create some sort of viral load in you that leads to an immune response and all that. But we don't really know that what we're doing helps. We don't know that staying around the house is better than, getting outside and being able to, mix and mingle. That, everybody going outdoors might be the solution to this, as opposed to everybody staying indoors. And
well, there was an article that came out the other day on that exactly, that actually the quarantine is probably the worst thing, because it's preventing this herd immunity. It's preventing the smaller exposure so people can actually mix and mingle. And that's how we develop our immune system, is by interacting and being exposed to, I mean, we have billions of little bugs crawling on our skin every day. We're we're more bacteria than we are actually human. And so
and by number we're way more viruses too. Like I listened to an epidemiologist on a podcast in the last few days, and I want to say like it was an average of 265 trillion viruses in your body at all times or something, viral particles. Like, all right, and we're worried about this one because this is the one that's going to kill us. All right. I appreciate your time. Always informative. You talk really fast. I try to keep up. So if anybody, you have anything exciting going on that anyone might want to check you out on, or anything you need help with? If any of the listeners are interested in maybe helping with your work, or what can we do for you?
Lockdown. Yeah. So right now we can't do anything. So we're on lockdown. And no, as of right now, I can't really do anything. And so the only, I don't have anything to offer at this moment. I apologize.
Okay. I'll make sure I'll put your phone number in the show notes so people can call you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen Kelly. Informative as always.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.